Welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegna, where I introduce to you some of the top financial professionals from around the country, and I'm talking Main Street, not Wall Street. I'm really excited about our next guest, Winston and Shane Stevenson from Arizona. I've known Winston for over 30 years now. So Winston and Shane, welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks
for having us, Tom.
Now, Winston, I know kind of a little bit about your background, but would you share with the audience your background of how you got in the financial services industry?
Certainly, a long story. My mom, I was graduated from college, went to school in Kentucky, and I was graduated and moved back home to Buffalo, New York, and I was working with my brother at his car lot, his used car lot out in South Buffalo, the Rust Belt. And I was struggling mightily with having a college degree and doing that. And my mom actually responded on my behalf to a blind ad in the Buffalo News, and they wouldn't tell us what the interview was about. Well, it turned out that it was a company called Combined Insurance out of Skokie, Illinois, and W. Clement Stone was the founder of that company and a renowned leader and mentor in the insurance business. And I actually started with them. They hired me on the spot. I thought, wow, I must be good or they'll take anybody, you know. But they hired me. I went to training in Chicago for 2 weeks, came back, became one of their leading producers. And my girlfriend at the time, her family decided to leave Buffalo. Her father was a doctor, worked at Good Sam Hospital in Phoenix, and the whole family moved out to Arizona. So I came out to visit. And I was like, oh, my God, I got to be living here in the sunshine. There's a city with mountains in the middle of it. And so I decided to move here, and I transferred with Combined Insurance of New York to Combined Insurance of America. And the entire state of Arizona, Tom, was my territory. So I traveled from Kingman to Douglas to Tucson, you know, all over this state, and it wore me out. So I decided to interview with several companies. New York Life was one of them. MetLife was one of them. And I wound up settling on MetLife. I got hired by a guy named Joe Swick, which I know you're very familiar with, who hired me. I came into the pre-appointment training program. And that office, as it turns out, was stacked with a lot of stars. You were one of them. The other fella from Chandler, help me with his name.
Wayne Candace.
Harvey Wayne
Cook.
Candace.
There's a whole bunch of them.
You know, they all went over to work with Lee Rogers in the Chandler office. And so next thing you know, I'm a MetLife guy for many years and decided after that, you know, I think I was with MetLife for 11 years. I became the branch manager with John Veltri up in Las Vegas and came back to work with Mike Mazzella in the Scottsdale office. It was a big history, and decided to go on my own while my wife was pregnant. And she says, you quit your job? And I'm like, yeah, I quit my job, pregnant with this guy. And we started our own business and have been operating as an independent advisor for many years now. So that's kind of the road.
Now, Shane, how about you? How did you hook up with Pops in the business?
Well, I like to kind of think about it like this. I've sort of been around this business my entire life growing up, right? I would actually go on appointments with clients and sit in the little carrying basket at the end of the table or at the end of the room. And so whether or not I really remembered that, I've kind of been around it my entire life. And so it was a pretty natural progression. Out of college, I had a job with a company, one of those companies that recruits kids straight out of college, and didn't really, float my boat, wasn't really going my way, the way I liked it to go. So after about a year or so, I came to my dad and I said, okay, I think now's the time that I need to get insurance licensed, I need to get securities licensed, and we can continue to build the firm up even bigger and reach new areas we haven't gone before just by having some more manpower.
What a godsend, Tom. What a godsend. He's brought so much to the company. Just getting this webinar hooked up, all the technology of it.
So Winston, tell me more about the Winston companies and the name and where all that came from.
All right, real good. So I'm over in Hawaii at a convention with American Equity. they sent us over there, and you know how those things are. We were sitting around breakfast one morning, and one of the guys, Mike Oxford's his name. He's over on the west side here in Phoenix. We're having breakfast, and Mike Oxford and I are talking, and he says to me, where do you live? And we got to know each other a little bit. Next thing you know, he refers me to Stan Schroeder with Advisors Excel over in Topeka. And so next thing you know, they're flying me out, recruited me, and I joined the FMO, Advisors Excel, and they really helped build out a system for us and helped us build our process and name our company and name our process, which we call the Retirement Flight Plan. And we also hooked up with Brookstone Capital Management at that time with Dean Zayed. And so we have this, we now have a full service, process-oriented financial services practice where we're dual license. We do insurance as well as we're IARs under the Brookstone RAA, if you will, and meet with clients and provide full service retirement planning for them.
So what are the areas that you primary focus in the retirement area?
Well, predominantly it's kind of holistic. Okay, so we do cover income planning, fiduciary investment guidance planning. We do high-level tax planning with creating strategies to reduce the tax burden on the retiree as well as the retiree's family. We also have a relationship with the Perkins and Zayed, which is the Zayed part is Dean Zayed, right, and Mark Perkins. So we use P&Z, as we call them, to do our wills, trust, estate planning work with the clients, and help in tax planning. We do also Medicare planning, the integration of Medicare supplements, and giving clients good directions on, what do you do after you come off of your employer's health plan, and finally legacy planning, which is again the wills, the trust, the powers of attorney, and the integration of what we call TCB, taking care of business. It's a man-made world of rules and regulations. And so many people of all walks of life, very successful people, doctors, attorneys, you would think these people have everything in order, but they're so busy doing what they're good at that there was just somehow a way that stuff never got done. And we become a very integral part in people's retirement plannings by bringing a one-stop shop to the table for these people. And so far, the feedback that we've got has been very powerful, and the people love it.
Now, Shane, you do a little more on the stock investing side. What are some of the pros and cons of the stock market right now?
Well, the stock market's always been the place where people go to grow their money. So the biggest pro of the market is, of course, the hope and dream of it appreciating over time. And history has proven that to be exactly what it does. Over the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, it goes up and up and up. And so for folks that are in their younger years, that's usually the place to go to get the growth, right? That's what powers your 401k, or that's what's powering your other investment accounts to help you build up for retirement. But the big con, of course, is the risk that's involved with it. And that risk really starts to become more important as you reach towards retirement and you get closer and closer to retirement, those older years. We always talked about the retirement red zone. And once you start to approach that retirement red zone, you have to look at your risk, you have to look at the market and say, is this where I really need to be? And really start to tone it back. And so we always focus on saying, hey, if you're in that retirement red zone, that's the 5 years before retirement, the 5 years after retirement. Let's take a new risk profile questionnaire. Let's really start to analyze how you're investing, because you can't really afford to deal with the natural things that happen in the stock market, those ups and downs.
Yeah, and when they're taking income, then that brings that sequence of returns risk into play, which people don't understand, and it's a huge risk. They think, well, the market's averaged 12% since 1924, so I can take out 8 or 9 or 10%, and they can't. And so, how do you explain that to clients?
Well, that's exactly it. All of a sudden, we have to pay attention to, when it's your time to retire, what will the market be doing? Because ultimately it's out of your control. And if you lose 12% the first year that you're retired and you take out between 4 to 6%, that's a hole that you'll probably never come out of. It would be extremely challenging to come out of come out of a dip like that. And so you have to protect yourself against those dips in the market, especially while taking income, like you said. And there's various strategies, tools, and things out there to make that important or to make that happen. But it's so important because, well, think about it like this. If you were a retiree that retired in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, 3 consecutive down years in the market, that combined with taking an income, you're never coming back from that dip that you took. Now, if you think about someone that retired in, let's say, the year 2010, for the next 10 years, you would have had a pretty good sequence of returns. And if you look at the actual numbers for how that would have worked out for person A versus person B, 2000 versus 2010, the difference is so drastic, and it's all just based on how the market performed, which is ultimately out of control or out of the control of the retiree. So you have to do things strategically to take that market risk off the table, because ultimately you don't know what's going to happen. You can only control how it will impact you, and that's where you have the power to make, adjustments, planning, and changes.
Right, and so it really works out to be you're either going to have good luck or bad luck, and I don't want my retirement to be subject to good luck or bad luck. So Winston, right. You did talk about holistic planning. What's really the difference between, an investment financial planner versus somebody who's holistic in their planning?
Yeah, and this is something we encounter frequently. We do so many seminars, and a lot of these prospective clients come to us, and they're with a big investment firm. They are with Fidelity. They're with Raymond James, Edward Jones. And one of the things that they purport as the difference of meeting with us versus meeting with them is that the meetings with the, quote, financial advisor that's just dealing with investments, the conversation is always about more. So let me give you an example. If you've already won the game, all right, you're ready to retire, you've got $2 million stacked up in IRAs. What is the benefit overall to you as the investor and the retiree and your family to, let's say, double that $2 million IRA to $4 million? If that happened, a lot of people might look at that one way as a good thing. But from a tax planning strategy, it's not a good thing, because we've doubled the tax liability. And in the event that taxes should go up in the future, we've actually created a bigger problem for that client by making that recommendation. And people see the difference between an investment advisor that's just trying to grow, because let's face it, they're paid based on assets under management. So they don't care if it's an IRA or if it's non-qualified. They're just trying to grow it. What we tell people is that what got you to retirement won't necessarily get you through retirement. And we talk about something, Tom, called ART, the art of retirement planning. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, but it's basically you can avoid risk, you can retain risk, or you can transfer risk. And that's really the difference between a growth-oriented investment advisor and a holistic advisor. We'll have that conversation about, do we want to avoid some of this risk? Do we want to retain this risk or transfer this risk? Because I haven't seen a person yet that would favor growth in a portfolio in retirement over a nice income and paycheck. It's all about the money. It's all about the income in retirement. And what we mean about transferring risk is taking the money you've already won and putting it in somewhere or some place that's going to protect that asset against market risk, so you're not retaining that risk, and provide a guaranteed income for life. Like you wrote about in your book, we call that a paycheck. Right. Or excuse me, a paycheck. A paycheck. We want that paycheck coming in to cover our fixed living expenses, and then we can build in paychecks from either side of the house, investment side or guaranteed side, to provide that lifestyle money. And that's the difference, I think, between investment advisor and a holistic advisor. And we also take into account, what happens to the family, because the only two guarantees in life are what?
Death and taxes. Yeah.
Right? Everybody answers that one right. And so there's one product alone that I can think of. And if anybody out there listening has another one, please let us know. But the one product that answers the call of duty to the problems created by death and taxes is life insurance. The other product that answers the call of duty to the largest risk in retirement, which is the multiplier of all other risks, is longevity risk. And the solution to that problem is an annuity. because it takes into account mortality factors, and I think that's the difference that people see between a financial investment advisor and a holistic advisor.
Now, Shane, you kind of specialize in sharing what are the pluses and minuses on annuities, what are the pluses and minuses on life insurance. Do you want to comment on those?
Yeah, so when we're talking about annuities, the biggest plus that we talked about, the biggest pro for annuities is the fact that they are completely guaranteed against loss. And so you can get meaningful growth inside of an annuity without the biggest con of the stock market, which is that potential for it to lose 10% overnight, 20% overnight, or 30% across the course of a month. So you can get complete protection on the money against the stock market, away from the stock market. Many of them are also completely free of any sort of management fee. So if you're someone that's fee averse and you think that the fees could be, weighing down the portfolio performance, which is possible at times, a lot of annuities are completely free of any sort of fee. But the biggest thing that people seem to like the most about the annuities is something that can be added on called a rider, which is basically like a feature that turns it into kind of a private pension.
Yeah.
And you could create for yourself, if you don't have one already, your own pension by using an annuity with an income rider to pay you out a paycheck or a playcheck, but for life. And so you can create that pension for yourself if you don't have it. You can transfer the risk to the insurance company, and then it's their responsibility to make sure that they will pay you out a set amount for the rest of your life. And that seems to be something that folks are very much looking for right now, because it's all about that cash flow, like we said earlier. It's not as much about the big IRA asset that's worth so much, because what does the 4% rule say it's really going to do for you? Not really provide you as much as you might think. If you can get a product that will pay you a guaranteed income for life with no risk, more than 4% of your asset per year, that's appealing, and that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, and there's a new white paper out from the Alliance for Lifetime Income. Dr. David Blanchett, Dr. Michael Finke wrote it. It's Guaranteed Income, a License to Spend. And what
license
they
to
talk about,
spend.
Yeah, what they talk about is that, there's two types of people in this world, savers and spenders. I'm a saver, and savers have a really hard time spending money, and retirement's all about spending money. And so what the annuity has done for me, I own 13 of them, and I will spend those paychecks and playchecks. I don't want to dip into my savings to take money out, but I'll spend those because those are coming to me for the rest of my life. I'll spend those. And so I think for people who have tough time spending money, and you've seen it, you walk into houses, they got lots of money, they don't even touch it. And you say, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're supposed to spend this money in retirement. I think by turning those into paychecks and playchecks, it gives the people license to spend their money. So
it definitely does. We talked about that. We share that article you're talking about all the time. And it really hits home with folks to say, you know what? What's this asset for? It's not really to just sit there and look pretty. It's all about what can it bring to me? And if you have this license to spend the money with the knowledge you'll never run out, your lifestyle in retirement will far exceed what it would if you were just managing this portfolio and taking dividends or taking a little bit at a time.
So, Winston, we talk a lot about risk because, everybody thinks retirement is about assets, a big number, when it's really not. It's about having increasing income and managing risk. So talk a little bit about some of the risks and how you mitigate some of those risks in retirement.
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because basically what we talk to people about very simply, and a lot of the stuff we learned from you, Tom, I'll be very straightforward about that, was, okay, when you're ready to retire, do you have enough guaranteed income to last the rest of your life and to cover your bills? And then if the answer is yes, do we have a guaranteed increase to that element, through laddered maturities and the like, right? And it's amazing how most people do not have that. They're getting ready to go into retirement, and they never thought about that because they spent so much time talking to the investment advisor about grow your boat type of things. But there was never a transition from growth of the portfolio to how that was going to provide income through good times and bads. That goes back to that, what got you to retirement won't get you through retirement. So that's number one. Number two, taking the key retirement risks off of the table. Well, everybody's concerned right now, and it well should be, because as of the date of this recording, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Averages, they're sitting at all-time highs, maybe a point or two off the peak, but in the neighborhood, right? What could go wrong is a question that I ask people, and we refer back to the retirement red zone Shane spoke about. What if in the next 5 to 10 years in your lifespan, never mind what the S&P did historically, what about this next 5 to 10 years of your life? Would it matter if your accounts doubled? Probably not. But would it matter if they cut in half, if you turn that 401k into a 201k? Yeah, make a lot of difference, right? So that's one of the number one risk is market risk. Second is sequence of returns risk. You come back to that conversation about your timeline matters. We have the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And when we explain that to somebody, they get it. And we say, when are you going to want to spend the most money? It's obviously in the go-go years. When are you likely to spend the most money? Could be in the no-go years, right? So we want to make sure that we have a balanced approach, that they can enjoy the sweet spot of life. And so that's one of the big risks. We want to take that risk off the table so they don't lose the ability to enjoy the go-go years and be prepared in the no-go years. The next things is, I think I talked about sequence of returns risk. We want to talk about withdrawal order risk and credit risk. We want to talk about inflation, deflation. We want to talk about long-term care. Jedworth says 7 out of 10 Americans will need some form of long-term care help in their lifetimes. What's your plan? And most people don't have a plan. And then the biggest one is, of course, we talked about longevity, because longevity is the number one risk of all of these risks, because it's a multiplier of all of the other risks. You see, the longer you live, the more likely you're going to see the stock market get a hold of you, and one way and a sequence of returns risks work against you. You're going to see inflation erode your buying power. God forbid we see deflation. That's a whole nother thing. But you also have an amplified risk of needing long-term care the older you get, and the older you get, the closer you are to dying. So if we can address longevity risk, wow, we covered a whole lot of things. And that is a big part of our planning model.
Now, Shane, you work with a lot of people. They have an IRA, they might have a 401k, they might have a Roth. What order should they be taking this money out? They might have a brokerage account. Some of it might be IRA, some of it might not be. Like, what order should they take the money out?
Well, it matters, right? And if you think about it, you'll say, okay, I've got this Roth, and maybe I should just spend the Roth right now because it's tax-free, try to minimize the tax obligation I have right now. But then you also might think, now, wait a minute, a tax-free dollar in retirement is worth a lot more than a taxable dollar. So maybe I should wait on that Roth. Maybe I should push that Roth out as far as possible and spend my IRA dollars now. Because believe it or not, we know that right now we're in a fairly low tax rate environment. And it is pretty widely believed that in the next 10, 20, 30 years, taxes have no choice but to kind of head upward. So we might get some extensions on current low tax brackets right now, but in the future, they're probably going to be a lot higher. So it makes sense to save that tax-free money, save that Roth money for as long as possible, let it grow, let it defer tax-free, and build up as much as you can. Spend that taxable IRA money now up front, because you probably aren't going to pay a lower tax rate on it in the future, and you can get it out of the way in the earlier years at what we believe to be about the lowest tax rate you'll ever have to pay on that money.
Now, Shane, if there's a high net worth individual or somebody who makes a lot of money, many of these people don't think they can do a Roth IRA contribution. But there is a way that even high earning people can participate with a Roth IRA. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. So you can do conversions. Now, when it comes to contributing to a Roth, you're limited by several different factors out there. The IRS says, hey, you made too much, you can't contribute to a Roth, but you always have an unlimited right to convert to tax-free, to Roth, to permanent life insurance. So that process basically looks like this. You can take an IRA that is kind of becoming the problem, right? You're sitting here looking at this bucket of money that says, hey, we got $500,000, $1 million, $5 million here of IRA money, and this is a tax bomb waiting to explode once we start to touch that money. You can take chunks of that and convert it to tax-free without any penalty. The only cost of the price of admission basically to that Roth club is you just have to pay the tax, but there's no additional restriction, there's no additional penalty, there's no additional fee. Just start converting big chunks straight from IRA over to Roth, pay the tax, but from then on, you're in the tax-free club with those dollars, grow them tax-free, grow, tax-deferred, and it'll be tax-free when it comes back out.
But Winston, you also do that backdoor a Roth IRA, don't you sometimes with
yeah, we do that
people?
where we'll have a business owner, for instance, that could set up a SEP IRA, and they could put $60,000 a year, make a contribution into that SEP IRA, and then the next year just turn right around, like Shane said, and do the conversion. We're going to go from always taxable dollars to never taxable dollars, and those never taxable dollars, they're going to go a lot further in your retirement spending, and they're going to go to your heirs tax-free and kind of cut the Secure Act out of the equation.
We always ask folks during our visits with them, we say, in front of a group, we'll say, how many of you guys have a Roth? And everyone raises their hand. They're so excited to, kind of proclaim that they have a Roth. But we'll say, keep your hand up if you think that Roth makes up the largest portion of your assets. And you'll see one by one all the hands start to drop, right? And that's because we weren't incentivized to put money into a Roth. We didn't get that immediate gratification of the tax deduction. But now that we're later in life, most people wish that they would have, looked at the Roth more. So you do have the ability to get yourself into a Roth. You just have to be willing and have a plan to take care of the taxes. And that's the price of admission to the Roth Club.
Real quick note on that. Through the, we call it our retirement flight plan software, we're able to take a look at the tax brackets. And we're able to say to someone, this is a strategy called tax bracket harvesting. We're able to say, hey, you have $100,000 under the cap this year between the 22 and the 24% tax bracket, just for example, okay? And even if you go into the 24% tax bracket, that's no penalty, right? Because you're only going up 2% and it's only on the amount over. And so we're able to show people a way to find the money to make that conversion. And that conversion, we sometimes recommend even the Roth IRA's prettier sister, as we call it, okay, which is that life insurance product, because we can create leveraged tax-free dollars now in this Roth conversion by the same process. But if they're in good health and they can qualify, they could get leveraged benefit, life insurance, and that life insurance policy can have an accelerated death benefit rider attached to it, and they can use leveraged tax-free dollars to pay for the cost of long-term care if they arise. Now, that's not one of the guarantees in life, right? Only death and taxes are, but we certainly advise people it's worth their while to have a plan in place for long-term care should it happen.
And I know you talk about that, people aren't really supposed to leave their money to their kids. They're supposed to spend their money and then leave their kids something else.
You know what's so funny, Tom? The roots run deep. Okay, we so much of this stuff that we talk about comes from you, and we thank you for that, because every single day, I think about you because I'll say something to someone like, "Hey, don't leave your money to your children," and they're like, What do you mean by that? What are you saying? And it's funny because if we didn't say that, they'd say, we don't want to leave our kids any money. We want to spend it all. But if I say that, then they question me, right? And I say, look, you worked hard for your money. You saved all your money. You should spend your money in retirement. And if you want to leave your money to your children, you should buy life insurance, because you could buy life insurance with pennies on the dollar. And you could spend the heck out of the rest of your money once you know you've taken care of business. You have your trust in place because you love your family. You have your life insurance in place because you love your family. You have long-term care in place as an asset preservation tool. What else do you want? Once people come to that recognition of that alpha that we have taken care of business, they can really enjoy the heck out of their retirement and spend that money without any reservation, which leads to a better retirement.
So, guys, we've covered a lot of information. Shane, is there something else you'd like to just share that maybe we missed so far?
I think just a little point about kind of being with a holistic advisor again. You may have someone that's a great stock guy. You may have someone that's a great annuity guy or a great Medicare guy. But these things, these strategies all start to work together, especially if we talk about life insurance conversions, because it becomes a conversation about investments, taxes, healthcare, and legacy all wrapped into one specific strategy. So if you talk to someone that's not well versed in these things, you might wind up with a plan that's just not as optimized as it possibly could be. So you want to make sure you work with an advisor that can help you integrate all of these things. And that's kind of where we come back talking about what it means to be a holistic advisor. Everything has to work together.
Winston, any final comments?
Yeah, I'll just share this. We just did we use a program called Snappy Kraken where we use it to keep in contact with our clients. And we just sent out a survey. And honest to God, I was overwhelmed at and I encourage any other financial advisors out there, that are listening to this, you should survey your clients to see what they have to say about you. We got an overwhelming response of 10s. The 10's the highest score. But how do you feel about having worked with us and the relationship of our family business as a boutique financial planning firm? How did you feel about the whole experience? 10s came back. And what a shot in the arm to us, because we know that we're making a difference in people's lives, and they shared back their experience with us. Now, these are people that are going to be very likely to want to share their experience with friends, relatives, and neighbors and refer people to us. And in fact, our referral business has just boomed because we do a good job. And so that's kind of the last thing I want to share with you. We're in business to help people. And it seems like, an old John Veltryism, right? Cast your bread upon the waters, it comes back bologna sandwiches. You can't give yourself away enough to people because they always give you back more. And what a wonderful feeling. I'm so glad that Shane's been able to be exposed to this, and he's gonna continue the career for many years to come. I'm not going anywhere. I've got a long ways to be in this business. We love what we do. Millie loves what we do. And so I'm honored to be able to be on your show here today, Tom. It really means a lot to us.
Well, I'll tell you, I give you both a 10 for your what you've done today. So if somebody says, hey, those are the guys I want helping me with my money, how can they get a hold of you? Well,
basically two ways, right, Shane? You can go to the website, winstonandcompanies.com. And on there's a Calendly link where you can schedule an appointment to come in and see us, or feel free just to call the office at 602-456-1928. That's 602-456-1928. And get on the schedule. Come see us. We'd love to visit with you, have a hot cup of coffee or a cold drink, and get together and visit.
Winston and Shane, it was great talking to you today. Wish you nothing but the best for the future.
Right back at you, Tom. Thank you, sir.